Are you recording already?
Yeah, this is
We
just
do,
for
like,
outtakes.
And then you just cut
Just
pieces
laughing.
of things that I
Yeah.
said and make
Little-
me seem ridiculous.
Oh, that
Just the
shouldn't be
best
hard.
Don't even have to edit for that.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, I'm Beth,
I'm Deb.
and this is the Beth and Deb show, and today we are here with our good friend and colleague, Dr. Greg Dam, and he is going to share with us about study skills. So this is going to be within our graduate school series, but it is really good for just basic, not even basic, I don't like that word, but just study skills in general. So you've been doing a ton of work and getting students to be effective studiers. Is that a word? Studiers?
Sure, I think so.
I think so.
Learners. I like learners better.
Yeah, so what do you often tell students about great study skills?
Science, now we're in an exciting time because there's been a lot of experiments, science and evidence gathering about how students study, what are effective strategies for studying. And it's an exciting time because we have something like answers. We have
Something like that.
I want to say something because
Yeah.
I doubt that we have discovered the most effective ways to study. I think
Sure.
that those might still be out there. They may involve technology in the future. I just imagine. I have a lot of hope for the future that we might discover even more effective ways. But we have discovered, at least among the typical things that are manageable that students can do, what are effective strategies. And not only that, we've also discovered that when we ask students what they do in their time learning on their own, it seems like for the majority of them do things that are ineffective and time consuming.
Oh,
So
wow, let's stop doing that.
Yeah.
one of the big things that we find that students do is they reread a lot.
Read it the same thing
That's
over
right.
and over.
So if we ask students, what do you do to prepare for an exam or to learn the material from a module or from a chapter? And they'll say, well, I read the chapter when it was due before class, and what I'll do is I'll go and I'll reread the chapter and I'll reread my notes. And
Look over my notes.
Yeah, and rereading is time consuming and we've discovered not very effective. So students, like all humans, are very pros at procrastination. And I know you guys
We're
have
going to
talked
take
of
the
hope.
pro
You
out
guys
of procrastination.
take the pro. I put the pro in procrastination. I have to live with my own procrastination. I think we all have to battle our own procrastination.
Yeah.
Procrastination is a fundamental aspect of human behavior because we temporarily discount events, the value of events that happen in the future, depending on how far in the future they happen. And we all know that hard work pays off in the future, but laziness pays off right now.
Yes.
And that's the
Yes.
Feels so good.
main motivation. Yeah, the binge watch some Netflix videos or instead of studying for that exam that's 2 weeks down the road and thinking, I got 2 weeks, I got plenty of time. Well, the way that I like students to, the analogy that I like to use for students to think about good approaches to preparing for an exam, learning new material, is to imagine that they're preparing for a powerlifting competition or an Olympic weightlifting competition. And it seems like a very strange example, maybe very specific example, but the analogy is almost perfect in a lot of ways. So if you imagine today, day one, you learn that you're going to be competing in a competition that tests you on your strength. So you're going to be lifting some barbells and whoever lifts the most weight wins the competition. And you want to prepare for this competition. So you pick up the barbells and you see, wow, this is the most that I can lift today. And then the competition is not for another 3 weeks. So what would you do in the next 3 weeks to prepare for the competition? And I get students thinking about, well, when would they train for the competition? What days over the next 3 weeks? How would they lay out a good schedule that would increase their strength for that competition? And often the strategies that they come up for a powerlifting competition or an Olympic weightlifting competition are, you could just take those schedules, those training schedules, and then just change it rather than lifting barbells rather doing some studying or some learning at home.
Yeah.
And that strategy works out very well, at least according to the evidence for the best ways to do this. And so you would want to think, well, what would be a really terrible strategy to prepare for a powerlifting competition?
Just wait all till the end and try to
Yeah.
That's
lift
so
a whole
good.
bunch of weight
Yeah.
the day before.
I have
That's
3
good.
weeks. I have 3 weeks to prepare for it. I know I need to maybe train and lift weights for about maybe 10 hours, maybe 12 hours, maybe 13 hours, something like that. Why don't I wait until 13 hours before the competition,
So good.
go to the gym, work out for 13 hours, lift weights, and then I'm going to be ready to go, walk into that
Yeah,
competition.
your muscles will be ready,
and
right?
you'll be
Yeah.
ready.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that we all understand that that's an awful strategy.
Yeah.
It's totally illogical.
And yet, that's the strategy that a lot of students use when they approach an exam date or
Yes.
a big test or some assessment of their knowledge. They wait until the last minute, a few hours, maybe pull an all-nighter, and often it can actually be counterproductive to do that, just as in powerlifting. A better strategy is to do short sessions of very intense study at the peak of the day. So times of the day when you feel very alert, you feel like that could be the morning for some of us, that could be the early afternoon, people vary. And pick a short session, less than an hour, I suggest 30 or 40 minutes, where you spend think about just powerlifting. You might want to have a very intense workout for a very short period of time and then rest. The same is true with studying. So you want to spend a short period of time, very intense period of time, and actually anything over 40 minutes, certainly anything over an hour, you start to lose you start getting diminishing returns, meaning that the efforts that you're putting into studying, you're not getting quite the outcome that you'd expect. It's those first 30, 40 minutes that you really get a lot out of studying. So think about in a big exam that's coming up in a few weeks, instead of leaving it, procrastinating and leaving all the studying closer to the date, start today with 30 minutes. Maybe organize yourself those 30 minutes. Maybe identify the concepts that you're weakest on that first 30 minutes. The next day, decide on what to do for another 30 minutes. Maybe on Saturday, 2 sessions of 30 or 40 minutes. And thinking about a powerlifting or a weightlifting competition as analogous to studying really helps, because as a neuroscientist, the reason the analogy works so well is because both learning and growing muscles involve biological processes that take time to occur. Some of them, for example, learning new material in a way that's permanent can take up to 6 months for the connections in the brain to be made, for that biology to occur, all the biological processes of growth, of new connections that support the learning. And so that's why the analogy between weightlifting and learning works fairly well. And that has to do with when you should be studying or when you should be learning.
So spacing it out. Chunks, small chunks.
Small chunks. Taking advantage of the most powerful mechanism of learning and memory, which is sleep.
Sleep.
So
That's right. I've just been reading that book about sleep.
that's right. So like my daughter likes to think about time in terms of sleeps. And she'll ask,
How many sleeps?
How many sleeps until?
how many sleeps, Dad, how many sleeps until we go on our camping trip?
Yeah.
And I'll say there's 10 sleeps
10
before we
sleeps.
go
Yep.
on our, and she can make sense of that.
Yeah.
And I think it's good for students to think about how many sleeps are there before my exam.
Yeah.
And if you can not do anything, and then you're not using those sleeps, the most powerful mechanism of learning and memory that your brain does those mechanisms happen during sleep. Or you can take advantage of it. Spend 30, 40 minutes studying today. When you sleep on it, that information is going to be consolidated. It's going to become more permanent, more accessible, more easily retrievable on that stressful day of the exam. And really, one of the big things that we've learned about study strategies is something we call spaced practice, which is something that a powerlifting champion would know about, or somebody who's very good at learning and studying would know about. Space it out over intense short periods across sleeps, and think about sleeps as being important times for learning.
And Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
right.
Did you have? I was just gonna say during those 30 minutes, what should students be doing? They're obviously not just gonna be reading, right? So what do you think would be the best?
Right. So we covered when students should be studying, how kind of schedule they should have for studying, weeks in advance, spreading it over those sleeps, small, short, intense sessions. But during those short, intense sessions, what should they be doing? What is the most effective strategy? It really depends on the material. But in college, most of the classes that students take, and most of the time was when they're assessed on exams, quizzes, and are the knowledge that they're tested on is conceptual knowledge, understanding concepts, demonstrating knowledge of concepts. And so like a history course or a psychology course or a philosophy class, you might have to know figures, historic figures, you might have to know dates, you might have to know, and we might often think of this as memorizing, and memorizing is important for learning too, but we really want to get to not just knowing facts but understanding them. And so it really depends on what you're trying to learn how to do. If you're trying to learn a skill like solving equations or writing an effective paragraph, then it really helps to practice that skill. Practice solving equations, practice writing paragraphs. But if you're trying to learn new knowledge and demonstrate that you have knowledge of a particular topic, then the most effective strategy we discovered is to do exactly what you're going to be asked to do on the exam. On the exam or on the quiz, you're going to be asked to retrieve from memory information that you have somewhere in your brain, in your mind, stored. And so what would a powerlifting champion do to prepare for a competition? Well, they would most likely spend most of their time exercising in the same exact manner in which they're going to be measured on the competition. So if it's squatting, they would do a lot of squatting. If it's I'm thinking of bench
overhead.
pressing or overhead, lifting the weights over one's head, they would be doing that a lot. And the same applies, it's a very simple rule for learning new knowledge. If you're going to be asked to retrieve information from your mind on an exam date or on an online exam or a quiz or some kind of written assessment, then the best way to prepare for that is to practice retrieving information from your own mind, and that involves what is technically often called self-testing or retrieval practice. And retrieval practice is doing exactly that. That day that you're sitting with a friend watching a Netflix movie and you recognize the actress and you have the name on the tip of your tongue and you're just about to, and you have a feeling that you know the name but you can't quite retrieve it, and you stop paying attention to the movie because you want to impress your friend that you know the actress's name, and you finally retrieve the name. The moment you retrieve that name, your brain begins to marks that information as important, and it begins to make connections, and they're not muscle fibers, they'll make you stronger, but they're connections that will make that information more easily retrievable, more accessible to you later on when you see the actress again. And that same process of retrieving information from the mind, from the brain, can be used to learn new information. In fact, we've discovered it's the most effective way to do it. So how do you do it? The most effective way is to go solo. Is to self-test yourself. And this is the best use of your time. Spend time trying to retrieve from memory concepts that you're going to be tested on. And my favorite way of suggesting students to do this is to use index cards.
Flashcards.
So you create flashcards. On one side of the flashcard, you'll have the concept that you're going to be tested on. On the other side of the flashcard, it takes a little bit of work to do this, but you want to write out maybe formal definitions, elaborate with some of your own words to help understand the formal definition, add pictures, add graphs that'll help you understand. Remember, this is here at the university, we're not just interested in students memorizing content, but we want them to understand it.
Yeah.
So make sure that on the other side of the index card, that there's enough information there to remind you of your own understanding of the concept, that concept matches the understanding that is represented in the textbook and by in your professor's lectures. and that you go through and practice in short and intense periods across sleeps, hopefully as many sleeps as you can, the knowledge that you're going to be tested on. And those two methods, spacing out your practice and practicing retrieval, have been shown, or at least we have a lot of evidence now, 100 years of experiments that show that they're the most effective strategies that are easy to use.
Mm-hmm. So they're efficient and effective.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, Greg, we'll probably ask you to give us some links or different things that we can post for the students who want more information
Sure.
about this topic. I know there are websites and blogs that people write about study skills, so we will link to some of that information.
Okay.
And if y'all viewers have any questions or comments or criticisms of Dr. Dan, no, I'm just kidding. Post them in our comment section and like, subscribe, do all the stuff you're supposed to do, to support your social media pals. Are you guys hearing this?
The
It's not
soundtrack,
distracting to you at all.
I thought that was in my head. Yeah.
I'm just like,
I was
we've got
so
this.
into the moment that
Do we want to start over?
I was zoned
No,
in.
I can cut this out.
Oh,
It's
okay.
fine.